Hey, welcome everybody. Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, your host of Sales and Cigars. My guest today is a good friend. Welcome to the program. We appreciate you taking some time out of the day.
Thanks, Walter. Really great to be here with you.
And I'm assuming we don't have snow in Arizona like we do here in Michigan.
Well, right now it's 80 with a nice little breeze out of the west. It's pretty typical for this time of the day out
Yeah,
here.
you suck. It was 35 degrees this morning when I walked out to my office. So, um, anyway, so we're this is going to be kind of a special episode for everybody that's listening. Russ and I went to Big Smoke a couple of weeks ago, so we want to talk a little bit about that. A few months back, Russ had an ability to do an exit from his business, so he'll tell you a little bit about that. So I want to start with what you're smoking and what you're drinking, Russ.
Sure. I'm doing the LFD Reserva Especial.
Is that one of the ones we
Nice.
got from the Big Smoke?
No, I actually ordered these after I got back because I was so impressed with. It's kind of a lighter, afternoon smoke for me,
Yep. What do we?
but very got plenty of flavor. And I'm doing a Glenlivet Founders Reserve. I was thinking about doing some of the doers that we tested in or we tasted at Big Smoke, but actually this is better. So cheers, happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Cheers. I did not like any of those doers that we had there. So, but I'm not.
Well, you're not a Scotch guy anyway.
Yeah, I'm not. But my buddy brought me a Macallan 12-year-old aged in bourbon barrels, which is like drinking butter. It was awesome.
Yeah, that is a good one for sure.
So, all right. So I'm drinking Elijah Craig 21-year-old, and
Wow, nice.
I'm smoking a Rocky Patel Year of the Dragon 2024, which has a really cool band. With this little,
Oh yeah, I should have asked him for one of those when he and I were at the same gate flying out of Vegas back to Phoenix. Heck of a nice guy.
yeah, he's a very personable. I mean, he built his business by going out talking to people. So when he's at one of those events, he's really accessible. And unlike
Right.
Guy Ferretti, who had security guards all around him, you couldn't get near him. So
Yeah, a little bit more of a celebrity status with Guy, I think.
yeah, maybe. Um, So let's talk a little bit about because the audience is there's a lot of entrepreneurs in there. There's folks that are running a bigger business that's got 30 to 100 people in it. You were running a business that was you and you and you. Um, so
Right.
why don't you talk a little bit about how you got to an exit, why you got to an exit, and you don't have to get into details or anything, but I think you had a cool opportunity come about, and it all kind of worked together. And what should people be thinking about there
You know,
if
it
they
might
have
might
that
help for
situation?
give a little bit of background. I've been in the commercial finance business, equipment leasing primarily for over 30 years, and built a fairly large leasing company. That my exit out of that was the 2008 recession, um, which kind of not put us out of business, so to speak, put us out of the business that we were in, which was a general equipment lessor. And I got involved in financing energy transactions in 2011, starting with commercial solar and then going to LED lighting and HVAC and other efficiency technologies. And we did well. We built a couple of portfolios for a couple of banks and got them into the energy efficiency finance business. But I started this little LLC kind of just as a consultancy brokerage firm in 2017 here in Arizona. And my intention, Walter, was to do deals and just continue to work part time and ride off into the sunset. And really, this is a business that you can do until you're just not able to see or speak anymore, I guess. But interesting that I was tapped to do some consulting work for a kind of a fintech company, more of a tech company up in Canada, who wanted to enter the energy finance space. They had some products in that space, and so I started consulting with them, which typically leads to an offer of employment, which I, politely turned down and told the CEO that, first of all, I'm not looking for a job, and secondly, I would be a terrible employee, right? At this at this stage of my career.
Well, that's an interesting point, right? Because I do a lot of consulting, and occasionally you get asked to join, and it's like,
Right.
my smart ass remark is you can't afford it, and more importantly, I'm unemployable at this point in my life. I'm just literally not able to go
Yeah.
work for somebody else. It just
Yeah.
wouldn't work out. So that's a valid point. But you were doing some consulting with a firm that um, had a product that wanted to get into your space. They had a quality product. They had a platform that was going to not necessarily change the world, but
Yeah.
was
I mean, and
had
it was
some
their
value
their
to it.
customers were driving them for financing solutions. So it was kind of the best of both worlds. They had an existing customer base that wanted to finance energy projects, and they just didn't have the expertise. So, long story short, I just told him, I said that they're just not interested in going to work. And he said, well, why don't we just buy your company? And thinking back on it, Walter, I said the wrong things, and so this is something to think about if you're in a similar situation where I said, well, there's no assets, right? There's no balance sheet. The only asset, the only tangible asset in the company is what's in the checking account. Outside of my lender portfolio, my customer base, my vendor partner base, and my expertise in the industry, he goes, that's what we want to buy. And I'm like, okay, well, great. So we it's really interesting situation because I hadn't considered the value of my network and my relationships and how I generated deal flow and transaction volume. So I think the first insight that I would want to share is, step back and kind of take a look at what value your business actually has to the right and to the right people, right? Because it really never dawned on me that anybody would want to buy a book of business, more or less, is what it was. But he just didn't want to do that asset sale. He wanted me to commit to a 3-year consulting agreement that I would be reasonably available to, you know, coach and train their sales team, um, help them set up. They're a fintech company, so there's a platform which is a more or less of a finance transaction syndication model. Um, and boy, that has over the last 7 months, Walter. That thing has honestly matured to the point that they're actually selling it to other lenders now as a software product. So yeah, it was. Go ahead.
So that's so so there's a win-win for everybody, and that the magic was finding somebody who wanted to be able to enter into your space, and not only it's the IP that you have in your head, right? Because that's a big part of it. You know how to put the deals together. You know who to talk to get the deals financed properly, with pairing those up with the people. They had a platform that allowed that to be probably multiplied and aggregated, maybe. Um, so it was. I wouldn't say dumb luck, right? Because it really was sort of, um, you didn't design it on purpose, but you came to it naturally because they were looking for some consulting work. And do you think that they had that in mind? That they were like, this guy's got something we want, or did that kind of uncover itself through the consulting process?
Probably a bit of both, but I will tell you this: what really was surprising to me was the depth of their lack of knowledge of what they were trying to do. It's like, what they didn't know was hurting them from developing the platform. So I think because they had not been in this industry, they were making assumptions that, I'm sure some were correct and some were not, but they just didn't have the expertise to design.
And
Right, right.
but you did. So you were able to. You was there any intent there? Like, did you realize this as you were engaging with them, or did
You
they
know where I
realize it
learned it? Well,
as they're
where it really
engaging with you?
became, you know, evident is when I finally got to engage with the sales team. And that's where the revelation came that you guys don't know what the hell you're doing. Why, when I looked at their sales process, right? And I looked at actually, their efficiency, the technology industry focuses on solving problems, making things easier, having a good process. But the process that they were following when I got there was counterproductive, and the sales team was very frustrated, right? And it didn't take long. I will tell you what, they course corrected. They probably implemented more changes in the first 90 days that I was there, or that I'm here, um, than they had in the previous, 2 years that they've been working on this thing. So you really find out what's going on. You could, when you talk to the sales guys, right, and say, okay, what do you know? What do you don't know? What's getting done? What's not getting done? Where are the pain points? What are your frustrations? And that's when it all became, and for me, I'm able to talk freely and openly at the C-suite level, right? I can talk to the CEO and the CTO and tell them, hey, this is where you're broken. And the good news is, Walter, they're really, really smart guys, but also very open and flexible. There was no sandbox issues. There was no territorial issues. No pushback. They just wanted to improve, and they've made improvements by leaps and bounds over the last 6 or 7 months. So that's really good to come into that scenario, right, where you have willing leadership to listen to what is going to work in the long run.
So I'll go back to something you said. Salespeople have a tendency to be candid and honest. They don't know how to do anything else. They're willing to share the warts and the ugly and what's not working. Um, Sometimes they overdo that, and you have to sort through it. But I think an even more important piece is that you have leadership that's willing to listen to
Right.
somebody that's got a white beard and can share wisdom, right? And that doesn't always happen, especially in that fintech type space, right? There's a lot of folks that are like, I know what I'm doing, we know what we're doing, we just want this and this from you. That really makes that ability to listen be somewhat, I wouldn't call it coachable, but open to ideas and clarity. Because I know you well enough to know that you weren't sugarcoating the things that were broken. You were saying this is broken and this needs to get fixed, and this is how you do it, right? You weren't like soft pedaling it. You gave
Yeah.
them, you
And
gave it to them straight up.
again, it's really interesting. There was a little pushback at the very beginning to some of the major changes, but not, once everybody had a chance to, huddle up and talk about it, and the consensus is, if we're not doing what we need to be doing, let's get that fixed. I will tell you this though, the sales guys are a hell of a lot happier. They're closing deals. Matter of fact, the youngest sales guy in the bunch just closed a almost $950,000 deal today, that I honestly don't think would probably have made it under the old system, right, that they were using. So it makes me feel good. I'll tell you that the gratification for me is that I really feel like I have been adding value, that they just didn't buy my
Hmm.
Rolodex, right, or my CRM or whatever. I really feel like I've made a contribution, and that keeps me motivated to stay engaged with them. So that
But there's a certain
right.
satisfaction, especially with a younger salesperson, to help them get to that, close a deal of significance. That, it doesn't have to be life changing, but it's a big win, and it gets them. They go into the holiday season with a big win under their belt. That feels good if you make a small part of that to
And
help them make that
he's
happen. That's
they're very
awesome. I
vocal
love it.
about
Um,
they're very vocal in sharing appreciation. Let me put it to you that way. They call it I think they call it kudos and shout outs. Every Friday we have a company meeting, and they call it kudos and shout outs, where each individual has an opportunity to say, hey, I appreciate what Walter did for me this week, yada yada yada. So they were very vocal about some of the changes that we implemented, and so I feel good about that. So there's on top of the a little bit of a payday and a contract, a 3-year contract, my job satisfaction level went up a great deal, because being part of a team does is meaningful, and I had kind of forgotten that because I've been working by myself for several years prior to this. So that's a little added benefit.
yeah, that's a great point. When you're out there being that solopreneur, and that you know you're a maverick, you're doing everything. We all have ways to delegate to assistants, and different ways to do that. But there's a certain amount of camaraderie. I had a sales meeting a week or so ago with a team that I've been working with for about 4 years, and they kicked ass this year. They
Nice.
had a 51% year over year growth, right? And it was there was a problem on sales on the day of, right, that something didn't go the way we had intended it. And one of the salespeople that was kind of struggling with the leadership piece, right, been there the longest, but hadn't been that
Right.
unselfish team player. And she stood up and said, "Screw this. We're here to celebrate this. We had an amazing year, everybody." And then she went around the room and pointed it out, right, to who did what. And we're a team. And
Yeah.
it was just so gratifying to watch that happen. And I had a small part in being part of that, and doing some coaching and stuff. But it was, to me, it was like
Right.
they gelled that that afternoon. It was all about the team, and screw this. We're gonna tell them that this is a problem, and they're gonna have to
Yeah.
fix it. But right, it was beautiful. And that's cool when you get to be able to be part of something that's a little bit bigger than you. Um, and you maybe play a small part in it, but just being part of a team
Yeah. No,
is
I
fun.
agree. I
Hoisting the trophy, as they say.
I would,
Um,
I in thinking about it from a solopreneur kind of standpoint that you and I had talked about previously, I don't think a lot of small business owners give enough thought to their exit strategy. I could tell you, I certainly did. My exit strategy was to basically just, work part time, work with my existing partners, and let the chips fall where they may, because I didn't have the pressure of a certain nut that I had to crack every month. But for the solopreneur or the
right.
consultant that has interest in maybe developing an exit strategy, I would just give some thought. I never thought about a tech company having any interest in an basically an equipment finance brokerage, right? I didn't think about, hey, what other industries might want to enter this space. So, and I think you and I and other entrepreneurs, solopreneurs would be good guys to talk to if if you have a particular business that you'd like to think about an exit strategy. I know I'm certainly willing to, talk about it and think, do some brainstorming and spitballing on, who might be interested. Matter of fact, it came up today. Interesting story. One of my longtime partners called me and said, "Hey, I told you about this company on this call yesterday." He goes, "Turns out they're for sale, and wanted to pick your brain about who you think might be a good buyer for this company." So right off the bat, I had three companies come to mind right away. And it's about a $20 million it's going to be about a $20 million deal. Um, and the for me, I was flattered that he called me and said, "Hey, who do you think would be a good candidate for buying this company?" So don't undervalue. I would say don't undervalue the conversations with your colleagues and in your network. Say, "Hey, if you were in my shoes and you wanted to think about an exit strategy, how would you think about it?"
Yeah, I agree that our networks are much more valuable than we realize. Nurturing those relationships are incredibly important, especially for those of us who have grown our businesses
Right.
based on relationships and introductions and referrals. It's a um, uh, 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 I don't know. It's just being able to um, nurture that and think about it and go beyond what we think is possible. Is we need to challenge ourselves as entrepreneurs. So I appreciate the insight and the story. So let's go talk about something equally as important as cigars. Um, so you and I we went to the Cigar Aficionado Big Smoke.
Yep.
Uh, your first trip, my second. There's lots of pluses and minuses. I had ability to compare it, um, but let me start it this way. When we could sit down anywhere at a seminar, waiting online, at a restaurant, at the cigar lounge in the hotel. I just think it's so cool that you could have a seat and have a conversation with anybody that you probably wouldn't meet or probably wouldn't have a conversation with in outside of that purview of cigars and bourbon and scotch. Um, and they bring you together. And I mean, I sat with um, that Sunday afternoon. There were Bears fans that they were watching a football game. There were people like, "Hey, can I sit down here? It looks like you." It was a very open and friendly environment, I think that's something that we need to always talk about or think about when we in the cigar culture.
Oh yeah.
That it's very inclusive
Yeah, I had a
naturally.
pretty good example of that is Johnny the truck driver, right? Jonetta, if you remember. There's this gal that what a wonderful, great personality. But I wouldn't suspect that. Number one, I wouldn't have expected that she was a truck driver. First thing. Second thing, here's a good looking lady that I was a bit surprised that I can't remember what she was smoking, but it was something that we started up a conversation about anyway. And just her whole group, right? That was over at the Davidoff Lounge when we were over there. So yeah, great group of people. Met a lot of people, and
Well,
yeah, definitely is a very inclusive and friendly. Everybody. So matter of fact, we sat down at that when we went into the vendor hall and sat down with Eric. The guy sitting there eating with us was Eric Espinoza, who makes the knuckle sandwich or whatever, bare
Guy
knuckle
Fieri.
sandwich cigar with Guy Fieri, right?
Yep. Yeah, and everybody's very open and even the cigar manufacturers, right? We talked about uh, Rocky Patel, but George
Right.
Padron, his kids and nephews were there. I mean, Carlito. I mean, everybody is. You can walk up to them and have a conversation, ask them
Right.
a question, and they don't dismiss you. Um, to me, it's not normal. So I was there the year before, where Charlie Wagner was one of the. He did a session where we paired some of his wines and some of his kids' wines with a Padron, a special one of the special Padrones, and great session, great wines, great
Right.
cigars. Right, those Padrones are one of my favorites. And then I'm walking through the hall of where you go talk to the vendors and get cigars, and I literally bumped into Charlie Wagner. I mean, literally bumped into him, and I'm like, oh wow, sorry, Mr. Wagner, great session today. I love the 21. It was awesome. Blah blah blah. And he's like, oh, if you look at 21, hey, if you look this, and he asked one of his guys to pour me one of the 18s, and it was just like, because you were there, because you're part of this thing, you know you get to interact with these people, and he was telling me what I was tasting. It was just a great experience. So you have that, to get to meet the guys that are
Right.
actually making the cigars and understand why and the challenges. They did a great job with the seminars, except for that last one, with the doers stuff, um, in my humble opinion. um, so were you
I think the
surprised by
first thing
anything at the
that
Big Smoke?
surprising to me was the number of people there. I expected there to be about 500 guys, especially with the tickets are not cheap. I mean, they're not extremely expensive, but you know, it's not a cheap ticket. Yeah, I think I expected to see 500. I don't know what you if they've released these statistics, but there's at least a couple thousand people there, right?
It
So
was a little over
that
two
shocked
thousand
me,
people. Yeah.
um, which that created a little bit more lines than what I expected, standing in line a little bit, because I expected the VIP gold package. We'd be kind of in small groups and whatnot, but um, the quality. I think the other thing would be the quality of the presentations and the folks, the panels. I really enjoyed the panels and listening to George Padron and yeah, Carlito or
Fuente.
Carlos Fuente. His speech was quite moving, I would say, which I didn't expect any of that. I thought it would be
Very.
a bit more sterile. It was very personal. Let me put it to you that way. This industry, I'll tell you what, they take it seriously. It's all about family, and they're very sincere, and they really do care about the product. So
So Fuente said something that I've heard in the past. He's like, everybody thinks that all of those guys in the back of the room, right? And he was pointing at all the other manufacturers that were
right,
there, like the
right,
family, the heads of the family that was there. And he's like, everybody thinks that they're my competitors, and I don't think of
exactly,
them as competitors. I think of them as my family. I think of them as like, we're all in the same business, and it's not that zero sum game, right? Where if you buy my Opus X, you're not going to buy the
right.
Rocky Patel 1992. Um, it's a big world out there, and I think that's just part of the charm of the industry. It's still a family. There's big companies there, and they weren't really represented, but they're big companies that are handling things. But I think the educational component as well. There was a lot of talk about
Right,
the $100 cigar, right? And how
right,
many people had created the $100 cigar, and why that was important, and how I think the other piece that came out of it was Europe has always been a little
right,
snooty about Cuban cigars. those are the best, and they noted that Europe is opening up
Yep.
to the Dominicans and the Nicaraguan cigars, and they're realizing that there's quality that goes beyond Cuba, and that actually some of the quality is kind of dissipating. You still got great dirt, you still got great air and the microclimates in Cuba, and you still got great tobacco, you know guys who know the business, but there are tons of
Oh
great
yeah. No
cigar
question about
manufacturers
it.
outside of Cuba.
Yeah, very very well. I will say it was well organized. Outside of when you have 2,000 people, you're going to have lines, right?
Well, I would say, like, if we went to the complaint department, uh, and when I did my survey, I talked about this. The To me, there was the lines were much longer. Take out
Right,
the going
right,
around and getting the cigars at the booths. Forget about that for a second. But the idea that you were waiting online to go to the seminar, you're waiting online to go to brunch, you were waiting online for every freaking thing. Um, that didn't happen to the extent that it happened this
right.
year, um, last year, and I don't know exactly why. I think it had to do with the venue and the way it was mapped out, and the ability to flow. Um, at the in 23, it was much there was much more space, um, and I don't think there was any fewer people.
Yeah,
Um,
that
it
was.
was better ventilated in 23. 24 was a
Yeah,
little
that
was
ballroom
this
was,
year was
I
a
don't
little
think,
that was a little rough.
designed to handle 2,000 cigars burning at one time. So it was a bit of a challenge.
And then Oz tried to get people to smoke two cigars at the same
Well,
time. That was a
it
little
was
rough. That was a
interesting
little rough.
smoking the three small ones, different leaves, just the single. I thought that was
Yeah.
something I had never done before, so it was pretty educational for me.
Yeah, so you got the education, you got the camaraderie, you've got the access to people that really know
Oh
more
yeah, for
than
sure.
they've forgotten more than we know about cigars. Um, so I mean, it's a wonderful event, um, that I can see why there's people
Oh
that
yeah,
have gone to every one, right? I mean, there's
yep.
people that have been there for 26, 27 years. Uh, and I, so I guess the question is, would you go back
I think yeah,
next
we
year?
talked about this. I would, I would kind of like to. One of the things you and I saw were lots of groups, groups of guys, right? 4 or 5 guys. Remember, we saw a lot of the half a table was one. They were even
Yep.
wearing matching smoking jackets and whatnot. Um, but I think it would be fun to do in a group. Although I do appreciate you hosting and providing the accommodations. That was great.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I think having four, six, 8 people would be a different kind of experience,
Right.
right? Especially
Yeah,
if you're getting to know each
that
other
would
as
be
well.
fun. I didn't, it would. I believe it's going to be the same venue, Paris. Which I hope they. Also, I can say, Walters, I hope they fix the ventilation. I would take standing in line uh, over the lack of ventilation in the ballroom.
And I don't know how you do that, because those HVAC systems are built, right? You know a little bit about HVAC. You don't go rewiring and inducting that. And that's what was beautiful about Resort World at the other end of the strip, was that they put tents up in the back. Um, so you were effectively outdoors, but inside of a tent that had great ventilation of
There you go.
pulling air out and putting air in. Uh, it just didn't. I mean, could you tell there was cigar
Sure.
smoking going on? Yeah, yes. There's a lot of people sitting there, um, but it wasn't so. Like, at that one point, I was
Yeah.
ready to, like, I
Yeah.
literally had to walk out and get some air. Um, because we could see the smoke coming from the ceiling, down to our eye level
Yeah,
of where we were sitting. So
yeah, that was
I, I
definitely a
I think
challenge.
that
But
could be improved upon.
if you enjoy cigars and you haven't been to a big smoke, even if it weren't something that you did every year, it's worth the experience. Um, also think
Yeah.
that the moderators did a great job. I can't think of his name, David, the editor. Is the name David?
So Savannah,
Yeah, yeah, he did it. I thought he did a great
Savona.
job.
Uh, yep. And I mean they all were all professionals, and the sound was good except for where Jack was talking,
Right.
because he didn't talk into the microphone. But aside from that, yeah, I think it's a great event for somebody to experience, and whether you go back every year or not. The first year I went both nights, um, and that there's nothing wrong with that. I think the only thing that I felt bad about is like I'm on East Coast time, and when I'm out there, like I go to bed early, I get up early, so like I'm up.
Right.
I woke up every morning like at 3:30, Vegas time, and so I was like not able to stay up and go do stuff with you. You were kind of like on your own. Um, the one night we hung out a little bit later at that one
That was
bar in the
that was
center of
nice.
Paris, which was kind of cool. Yeah, but I think I need to create some adjustment or something so that I can stay up a little later and go out. Right? We had some great meals. Um, you made a couple of good calls on the restaurants, so it was a positive experience. So we'll have to find a couple other dudes
Well, maybe
to go
somebody
with us,
listening to the
or dudettes.
podcast would be
Um,
interested.
yeah, they can reach out. We'll have to do that. So, and it also gave us a taste to try some cigars that we hadn't normally tried. Um, so it's an experiment a little bit. So I appreciate you taking that, and I'm gonna try to twist your arm to go back next year.
Yeah, I,
We'll just
I
have to get the
screwed that
dates
up.
right,
So I
right?
was there
Whether
a
we,
day early, right?
yeah,
But I'm still working my way. The other point I'd like to make is I think we both came back with more than 60 cigars. Would you say at least 60, if not more? And I'm
yep.
still working my. And this LFD is an example of one that I'm buying now that I wouldn't have bought that unless I tried it at Big Smoke.
So I mean, I think if there's any cigar manufacturers out there listening, that it's worth being there because you got people that are. I mean, there's some guys that are just to get free cigars. I
Right.
mean, I don't know. They're not free, right? Because we paid the freight to get them. But to me, it's like, oh, I've never had that cigar before, so let me try that.
Right.
And then there's some that I know that are beyond my palate, uh, and but there's lots of guys that were trading cigars, after they come back to the
Yeah.
table, right? They're trading them like baseball cards. I'll take your Padron, and I'll give you this,
Right.
this Oz over here, right? You could trade them around. So it's a it's a great environment, great people. I saw fewer women there this year than I did in the year before. I thought that was kind of interesting. Not sure why. Um, I met a lady that when I was standing online for one of the booths, she had flown down from Calgary
Right.
by herself to attend the event, uh, which I thought was kind of cool. But I saw fewer women that were there than the year before, and I didn't take a survey, but um,
Yeah. Yeah.
that was
I would.
interesting.
I tell you
Right?
that the couples that I talked to, the one lady that I recall, I don't remember where they were from, but she said, "Yeah, I'm here in a support role." I thought that was she wasn't smoking cigars, but she was there to support her husband. And then the folks that were sitting directly in front of us at the seminar from Boise, right? The husband, she got him into
Right.
cigars.
She
He was
got
a
him into
banker, had
cigars,
never
right?
had a cigar, and actually her brother, so his brother-in-law, got him into cigars, and she had smoked cigars with her brother-in-law. So anyway, she was really cool talking to her as well. So
Yeah, it just speaks to the original point of just there's like good good people, different walks of life, and I can't say I met somebody that was like, oh, that was a he's a
either.
douche. I didn't meet anybody like that. Some really, and then we had some great conversations on Sunday. You went back and I went to I did some work, and then I went to
Yeah.
the Monte Cristo Lounge inside of Paris, and kind of set up shop there with my computer, and was watching football games. And I don't know, there were just people that were interacting inside of that lounge that were um, hilarious. They were literally just you know having a good time and
Yep.
making sure that everybody else had a good
Yep.
time. So
It was,
it's
it was a
good
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 time.
things all
I will
around. So
say that.
and I'm glad
Yeah.
we're able to hang out, and hopefully we do that again. So um, I appreciate you taking some time out of your 80-degree day to go sit in the shade and have a cigar and some scotch and reminisce a bit. So man, congratulations on the exit and being able to keep
Thank,
doing what you're doing
thank.
in the frame
I
that you want to
appreciate
do it.
that, Walter, and I also appreciate
That's awesome.
your new newsletter. That's I've been sharing that among the sales folks. They appreciate it. Um, so there's they. The other thing about small companies, they don't really have a lot of sales coaching, so to speak. They're basically they're doing everything they know to do, but sometimes they don't know what they don't know. So I've been sharing that with them, and yeah,
Well, but you're giving them coaching. You're giving them experience, and you're able to support that. And you're right. Small companies they don't have a budget for development. They don't have a budget for training, and it's that's sort of the area that I try to stay in, um, because there's so much passion. There's so much opportunity in those spaces because I I look at it this way: there's so many really bad salespeople out there. So many people that are pitching instead of trying
right.
to help someone and trying to understand. And it's so easy to differentiate yourself um, by acting like a professional. And these smaller companies could benefit by people that with your experience with people that do what I do. It's just hard for them to take the risk because
I
there's so
agree.
many other things that they could do with their resources. So, all right, man, we're gonna land it there. Thank you, and I'm gonna try to get out to the Arizona area, the Phoenix area, at some point during our nasty little winter. I got a couple of friends who live out there. You being one of them, so we'll go
Yeah,
maybe
sounds
go
good.
have a
Well, cheers,
cigar
Walter.
at
Thanks for
Fox
having me.
Cigars.
You bet.
I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time. Bye.